Our film begins in a bedroom, and we see bloody clothes all over. A beautiful woman is talking on the phone, and she seems to be enjoying the fact that she's just taken someone's life. She tells her lover that her ex-husband is down in the basement, and she goes to take a bath. Little does she know that her ex is alive enough to make it to the bathroom, wielding an axe. After the woman screams, the Crypt Keeper calls out, and he's not happy with the actor's performance. When the Crypt Keeper spots us, he welcomes us and takes us to the back to tell us the tale of Demon Night. The story starts with a man named Breaker driving down the empty highway at night, and he notices that another car is following him. In the other car, the Collector follows after him with a grin on his face. Breaker doesn't realize that he's out of gas, and he stops his car in the middle of the road. He grabs a weapon and fires at the Collector, and he eventually ignites the car. When he realizes that he's not slowing down, he jumps out of his car, and the Collector rams the car into a fiery blaze. As Breaker runs away from the destruction, he reveals a star tattoo which appeared on his hand, and he only has 2 more lights left. Eventually, he comes to Wormwood, New Mexico, and he tries to steal a car at the cafe. Suddenly, a boy appears, and he runs inside to tell his dad that someone is stealing his car. Breaker makes a run for it, and he eventually runs into a drunk farther down the road. He sits down to drink with him. Back at the car crash, the police show up to investigate the scene, and the Collector walks right out of the crash to see if they have seen Breaker. Back in town, Breaker follows the drunk to a nearby church, and he finds that his final star tattoo has appeared. When they go inside, they see that it acts as a hostel, and Irene has Geraldine show him to his room. Once upstairs, Geraldine gives him a warm welcome, and she goes on her way. Downstairs, Wally talks with Cordelia about why he got fired. She asks Geraldine if she's done with her laundry. Wally decides to help her with the sheets, and Cordelia talks with Irene about giving him a freebie. Back on the road, the Collector tells the cops that Breaker has stolen something important to him, and they answer a call from dispatch about the attempted grand theft auto. Breaker sits to eat dinner with the other guests, and he gets startled when he hears a car horn outside. It turns out to be Roach, and he takes Cordelia up to their room. After a moment, Irene calls the station, and she tells them that she's got the man they're looking for. They make it over to the church, and Irene lets the men inside. Breaker holds a knife to Geraldine's throat, and the Collector tells the cops that he won't go through with it. Sure enough, Breaker can't do it, and the police arrest him. The Collector mentions that he's looking for a key that Breaker took, and they search his room upstairs. They never find the key, and the police get ready to take Breaker to the car. The Collector points out that he needs the missing key, and Willie realizes that he watched him stuff it away earlier. After he brings the key out, the police crack down and take both of them. Before they make it out of the building, the Collector punches his fist right through the officer's face. The other cop gives Breaker the keys to his cuff, and he dives for the key. When he holds the key up to the Collector, it burns his face, and he rushes out of the window. The Collector announces that this property is condemned, and he spills his own goo to create evil spawn babies. Eventually, the spawn babies take shape, and they surround the hotel. Inside, the lights go out, and the spawn babies have disappeared. Once things die down, Roach decides that he can make a break for the car, but this proves to be problematic. He manages to make it back inside, but Cordelia is attacked by one of the demons. Roach leaves her to fend for herself, but Wally shows up to protect her. Back inside, Geraldine sits with Breaker to try and figure out what he's so wanted for. Meanwhile, Roach decides to confront Wally, and Cordelia steps in to keep him from causing more problems. After seeing how Cordelia is standing up for Wally, Roach takes her into the bedroom where he makes sure she understands where he's coming from. Downstairs, the local cat runs into the basement, and Breaker heads down there with Geraldine and the others to find her. After Breaker makes sure that the cat isn't possessed, they notice the hole where the cat came in from. Suddenly, Cordelia hears a flattering voice showering her with compliments, and she goes to the window to realize that the Collector is speaking to her telepathically. The collector tries to get in her head, and soon, Wally goes to check on her. When he goes inside, Cordelia has a change of heart, and she gets up close and personal with him. Down in the basement, everyone hears Wally screaming, and they rush up to Cordelia's room to see what's going on. They find Cordelia munching on Wally, and she attacks Breaker next. When Irene goes to use the key, Cordelia breaks her arm, and Breaker has to put Cordelia down. Roach thinks that they need to approach their situation differently, but Breaker assures them that he knows the best in this situation. In the end, Roach decides that he's going to make a break for it through the tunnel they found in the basement, and a few others join him. As Roach beats on the wall, Breaker has a vision of a man collecting the blood of Christ inside the key. Finally, Roach opens the wall, and everyone makes their way inside the tunnel. The tunnel ends up being an old abandoned mine, and everyone makes great timing making their way through. Everything is going well until Geraldine hears a boy crying, and she spots Danny crying in a corner. As she helps him up, they find that they are not alone, and they run ahead to the rest of the group. While they get back to the hotel, they make it on the other side of the seal that Breaker set up, and they're safe. That is, until Roach decides to shoot one of them. Now, with the seal broken, the creatures make their way inside to terrorize the group. Eventually, they make it upstairs to the other side of the second seal, and Breaker makes sure that Danny isn't possessed. Next, they do an ammo count, and they realize that they are more screwed than they originally thought. Then, Breaker has a vision of a memory, and we see how he came to possess the key during the war. When he comes back to the present, Roach wants to know how they survived this, and Breaker explains that they just have to survive the night. Finally, he explains that these creatures are demons that came from the nothingness, and that he has the final key that they need to rule again. Breaker then explains that the blood inside the key was once from Christ, and he can't let the blood inside run out. Otherwise, the demons will bring back the darkness. Suddenly, Geraldine notices that Danny is missing, and in the commotion, Roach manages to swipe the key from Breaker. When Geraldine goes searching, the collector manages to show her what she is missing in life, and he assures her that he can help her obtain it all. The collector asks her if they have a deal, but Geraldine stands her ground. It turns out that Danny and Willie have been hiding in the attic, and Irene can't believe that they're just chilling here. After Willie and Danny leave the attic, they go looking for Breaker, and the collector creates the perfect fantasy for Willie. Back in the attic, the officer and Irene find that Wally was fired for a good reason, and they find all sorts of weapons and ammo. Eventually, Breaker and Geraldine find Danny and Willie, but Willie is already possessed. While everyone is dealing with their own problems, Roach is ready to strike a deal with the collector since he has the key. Breaker and Danny manage to put an end to Willie, but Roach is coming to the end of his agreement with the collector. He wipes away the blood seal that's stopping the demons, and he hands over the key. As he goes to leave the building, the collector points out that he lied, and the demons tear him apart. When the collector goes to find the other survivors, he gets an arrow in the eye, and Breaker manages to grab the case with the key. While everyone makes it to the attic, Irene and the officer take out as many demons as they can. Breaker conducts a little experiment to see if Geraldine is worthy, and it turns out that she's worthy of carrying the key next. Suddenly, Danny reveals that he's possessed, and he attacks Breaker. After an intense battle, Breaker is at his end, and he fills the key with his own blood. He transfers the key to her, and she gets a full history of the key's past. After that, Breaker passes on, and Geraldine is alone. Just then, the attic door bursts open, and the collector rises. He finds Breaker's body, and he calls out to Geraldine. She appears covered in blood, and he soon realizes that it's not her blood, as he burns by touching her. He coaxes her downstairs, and he washes the blood off of her in the tub. Once she's clean, he dumps out as much blood as he can, but Geraldine drinks some of what's left. The collector drags her downstairs, and he takes a moment to propose to her next. Geraldine's silence makes it clear that she doesn't want this, and when he goes to take her heart, she spits blood on him, He's immediately engulfed in flames, and the entire hotel blows up. Geraldine is protected, and she lives to see the sunrise. She gets dressed and leaves with the key to get on a bus. While she rides the bus, she checks the star tattoos on her hand, and she sets a seal on the bus. Eventually, the bus driver stops to pick up another shady man, and he senses the seal. He tells the bus driver that he'll just wait for the next bus, and he starts walking after them as they drive off. Elsewhere, a hand reaches to the surface to grab a flower, and it turns out to be the Crypt Keeper grabbing a flower for his dates. They head to the opening of his new movie, and he gets the final cut. Tales from the Crypt are always a scream, but Demon Night hit differently. It's always a pleasure when the Crypt Keeper is involved. And that wraps up this recap. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this recap, please subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss a single video.